India. In the beginning of 1947, things looked very bad. The British were very worried and they needed a new policy. The British Prime Minister suddenly announced on February 20th, "We will leave India by the end of next year." He sent a new representative, Lord Mountbatten, to India to make this happen, and I spoke to him. "You must leave India now," I told him. "You are masters in somebody else's home. You must humiliate us to control us." "We want to leave, but what will happen? There is so much violence," he answered, very worried. "We can't just walk out." "Yes, you can. There will be chaos for a time, but in the end, we will survive," I answered. "There is no nation on earth that wouldn't prefer its own chaos to calm under a foreign rule." Finally, the British decided to leave India on August 15th that year. But unfortunately, India was now going to be two countries, India and Pakistan. The Muslims began to move from their homes into the areas of their new country, and the Hindus in Pakistan moved to India. There was still much violence, and I was very worried. What was going to happen when we became independent? I talked of peace and non-violence to everybody. I listened to the people. I tried to solve as many problems as I could, but I knew things were only going to be worse. On the day the British left, there was no time to celebrate. Terrible fighting began between the Hindus and the Muslims. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Millions were forced to leave their homes with nowhere to go. I felt powerless. Every night, I talked to the people and tried to stop the violence. In November, I went to visit homeless Hindus and Muslims in camps. I told them, "I'm sad to see so many of you without homes. I can help you most if I tell you how to be better. You must help each other. You must live for others and not only for yourselves." On January 13th, 1948, I decided to fast in my home in Delhi until the fighting stopped or I died. "I might die, but death will be better than to see the suffering of my people," I said. "I will end my fast when Delhi is peaceful. If Delhi is destroyed, all of India will be destroyed. I don't care if the fast continues for a long time. I will continue as long as necessary." The doctors were worried about me. I didn't want to let them examine me, but they said, "If we cannot tell the people about your condition, they will not be affected by your protest." In the end, I let them examine me. By the third day of the fast, I was very weak. I couldn't even drink water. It made me sick. I lay all day on a small bed at the entrance to my home. An endless line of people walked by to look at me. Many cried and said prayers. They could see my pain. But even in pain, I felt good. I was doing everything I could to help bring peace, and this made me feel at peace with myself. That morning, I spoke to the people on the radio from my bed. I wasn't able to get up. Finally, my fast began to change things. People started to think about the terrible things they were doing. They knew they must do something real or I couldn't stop my fast. On January 18th, representatives of the two sides came to me and signed a peace agreement in front of me. The Hindus promised, "We will protect the life, property, and religion of the Muslims, and there will be no more violence." The Muslims said, "We will also stop the fighting and live in peace with our Hindu brothers." Were they saying these things just to save my life, or did they really mean them? I wasn't sure. "You must keep your promises," I said. "You must also convince all India to do the same." I thought for a long time, and then I announced, "I will stop fasting." Somebody gave me a glass of orange juice, and I drank it slowly. That evening, in the prayer meeting, I said, "There must now be complete friendship between Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. This friendship must never be broken." The violence stopped in most places, but I was afraid India and Pakistan wouldn't be friends for a very long time. At a prayer meeting a few days later, in the middle of my talk, A young man threw a bomb over the garden wall. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. I was very calm after the incident. The next day, somebody asked me a question. Why were you so calm when the bomb was thrown into the garden? I explained, I'm not angry at the boy. He probably sees me as his enemy. The police shouldn't arrest him. They should teach him to think in the right way. Muslims and Hindus are all children of Mother India. Chapter 11. Gandhi's Death.
My name is Ava. I am a niece of the great Mahatma, and I had the honor to be one of his assistants in the last years of his life. I must tell you about his last day. I will never forget it. At 4:30 in the afternoon on January 30th, 1948, I brought him his meal, goat's milk, vegetables, and oranges. He was talking with some of the country's leaders about very important matters, but it was time for him to go to evening prayers. I didn't want to interrupt him, but I knew it was important for him to be on time. So I picked up his watch and showed it to him. I must go now, gentlemen, he said immediately. He got up and started to walk to the large park to the left of the house. I walked with him on one side, and his other niece, Manu, an assistant like me, walked on the other side. Bapu was still weak from fasting, so he held on to our shoulders. He called us my walking sticks. On the way to the park, he was very relaxed and laughed with us. Bapu, I said, your watch must be very sad. You didn't look at it once today. Why should I? Gandhi responded. You are my timekeepers. But you don't look at the timekeepers, Manu said. By this time, we were walking on the grass near the prayer area. About 500 people were waiting for him. I'm 10 minutes late, Gandhi said. I hate being late. I should be here at exactly 5 o'clock. He quickly walked down the 5 low steps to the prayer area. He was only a few yards from the platform. Most of the people stood up. Many moved forward, while some moved back to let him pass. Others kissed his feet. He took his arms from our shoulders and put his hands together in the traditional Hindu greeting. Just then, a man moved forward as if he wanted to greet Gandhi. But because we were late, Manu tried to stop him and hold him back. He pushed her away and stood about 2 feet away from Gandhi. Suddenly, he held up an automatic pistol and fired 3 shots. I was in shock and I couldn't react. When the first bullet hit Gandhi, he didn't fall. When the second bullet hit him, I could see red blood on his white clothes. His face turned as white as his clothes. One of his arms fell on my neck. Oh God, he said quietly. The third shot was then fired. His thin body fell to the ground. His round glasses broke on the stones, and his leather sandals fell from his feet. Manu and I immediately picked him up and carried him back to his room. His eyes were half closed. A doctor was called immediately. He examined him but declared him dead. Nothing could save him, he said later. The great man was killed instantly. We sat with the family for hours near Gandhi's body. I held his hand and cried. Prime Minister Nehru soon arrived. He bent down over Gandhi and cried. People outside also wanted to see him one more time. We carried his body to the roof and shone a light on it. Thousands passed by the building and cried. Near midnight, we took him back inside and prayed beside him all night. In the early morning, we washed his body and prepared it to be burned according to Hindu custom. Then we covered him with the Indian flag and put roses on top. He looked peaceful but very sad. The funeral procession left at 11:45 in the morning, but only arrived for the funeral at the river at 4:20 in the afternoon. The procession moved along very slowly. 1.5 million people marched in it, and another million watched. We heard prayers and many shouts of, "Long live Mahatma Gandhi!" Three planes flew above and dropped millions of roses. Another million people were waiting at the river. There was an enormous pile of wood. The body was put on the pile. At 4:45, Gandhi's third son, Ramdas, lit the fire. Everybody began to cry as the fire burned the body of our great leader. It burned for 27 hours. At the end, we collected his remains and put them into an urn. Ramdas put some flowers around the urn, held it to his heart, and then carried it back to the house. 2 weeks later, the contents of the urn were thrown into the river in another ceremony. Millions of people followed the urn to the river.
Chapter 12. Gandhi Remembered.
A short time after Gandhi's assassination, Prime Minister Nehru went on the radio to talk to the people. He spoke from his heart. The light has gone out of our lives, and there is darkness everywhere. Our dear leader, Bapu as we called him, the father of our nation, is no more. But maybe I am wrong. His light has not gone out, but will shine for many more years. And 1,000 years from now, that light will still be seen in this country, and the world will see it too. This light is the light of living truth. This truth led us to freedom. People from all over the world sent messages of condolence. Heads of government, kings, soldiers, scientists, and ordinary people. Lord Mountbatten, the last British representative in India, said, "I hope Gandhi's life will inspire our troubled world to save itself by following his noble example." A famous French politician said, "I do not know his language. I never went to his country, but still I feel sad. I have lost somebody important. The whole world has lost an extraordinary man." The famous scientist Albert Einstein said, "In days to come, people will find it hard to believe such a man walked on this earth." For millions of ordinary people all over the world, Gandhi's death was a personal loss. They didn't really know why. They just knew he was a good man, and there are few such good men in this world. The United Nations lowered its flag in his memory. The British representative called Gandhi the friend of the poorest, the loneliest, and the lost. He added, "Gandhi's greatest successes are still to come." And in fact, many freedom groups have adopted Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. Martin Luther King Jr., the fighter for the rights of Black Americans, believed in his philosophy, and so did many other leaders. But for them, like Gandhi, nonviolent resistance is not the easy way, because it demands great courage to fight injustice without guns, to suffer but not hit back, to die but not to kill. That was Gandhi's message, and the little man from India tried to teach it to the whole world.